if I'm wrong, but I think I saw Ramzan Kadyrov when the Kharkov offensive was initially going on. He said, like, I promise we'll take back all of the Kharkov region. This is something he said. He's kind of known for making these boisterous claims throughout the war, and being very aggressive with his vision for what Russia should do and the allies should do. Do you think that this is something that might even be on the agenda for discussion in Russia right now, taking back Kharkov? And, I saw some discussion. I saw some Telegram posts from Ukrainian military personnel saying that in certain regions of Kharkov already there are Russian counter offensives starting to take place. And lastly, do you think that the rains are going to affect, a potential counteroffensive in this region by Russia if that Oskol River gets super filled up?
Right. The thing to say about Kadyrov is that he says lots of things. They don't always correspond with the actual events on the ground. But if you follow him as closely as, we do on the Duran, the very interesting thing about Kadyrov is what he says tends to happen. In other words, it hasn't happened when he said it's going to happen.
Yeah,
but it does happen a little later. His timelines are a bit strange. And bear in mind also that, of course, he does have something which none of us do, which is direct access to the Kremlin. He's able to speak to Putin. He's able to speak to Shoigu. He's able to talk to all of these people. He knows what they're thinking at any particular point in time, or at least one must assume he does. So I would actually take what he says quite seriously once you allow for the fact that he's a rather exuberant character. And his timelines, as I said, can be a bit odd. I cannot imagine that there is no Russian plan for Kharkov eventually in this war. I mean, I don't want to guess too far ahead, because obviously for the moment the Russian priorities are Donbass and Kherson. They're in the south of Russia, but with 300,000 men in Ukraine, their options start to increase enormously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can start to do all kinds of things which they cannot do with 80,000 men. We wouldn't be talking about just 300. Then we're talking about almost 400,000 men. At that point, Kharkov surely becomes a point of serious interest to them. And I personally don't believe that they're going to leave Kharkov, as it is. I think they see it as unfinished business, and I'm sure they will return there. And there's been a lot of expectation, if you follow the Russian media, that they will eventually return there. So that's what I think. I don't know that it will be given the immediate priority. The immediate priority will be to stabilize the situation in the south, where Ukraine is still trying to carry out offensives, in northern Donbass, where Ukraine is also trying, not very effectively so far, to carry out some kind of counteroffensive too. That's where the Russian priority at the moment will be. But the big take from this mobilization, which is necessarily a partial mobilization, is that the Russians will do what is needed in order to resolve the situation militarily in Ukraine. And that the fact that they've taken this step, the fact that they've also decided to press forward with the referendums, means that they now have accepted completely that the negotiating track is exhausted. It's not going to lead anywhere. There is no prospect of a diplomatic solution to this conflict. So there has to be a military one. And that's what they're now committed to.
But Putin said as much, didn't he, Jackson Alexander? I mean, in his speech, he mentioned Novorossiya.
Yeah.
And he's done that before. So he mentioned Novorossiya. So I think that's a sign that he is thinking of Kharkov. And of course, if you're talking about Novorossiya, then you have to talk about Odessa as well. But that's for a future date. But another interesting part of his speech was that he led us into a bit of the speculation with regards to Boris Johnson and the negotiations in March, April. And I think in his speech, he even said, I'm going to say something here for the first time that I haven't mentioned before, which was the fact that they were very, very close to negotiating a settlement, and that Boris Johnson flew to Kiev, and he ruined that settlement. And Zelensky and the collective West, they opted for escalation. And so I think that was just Putin telling the world, look, we tried. We exhausted all our options. And here we are. Now we're going to do a partial mobilization, and we're going to see this through to the end. And, we're spending a lot of time discussing Russia's next move, but Ukraine is really in a box now, as is the collective West, because I don't see any other options for the collective West, Ukraine and NATO, aside from either going all in or backing completely out. That's where we are. I mean, the ball is really in their court at this moment. And we have to ask ourselves, what is NATO? What is Europe? What is the EU? What is the Biden White House? What are they going to do now? Because Russia's clear. They're going to see this all the way through to the end. Even Lavrov today at the UN said, we're going to see the special military operation all the way to the end till it's a success. So NATO, Ukraine, the European Union, what do they do now? Many EU countries have been demilitarized. The economies are collapsing. Even the United States, the Pentagon is telling Biden, look, you're giving weapons from our own military inventories now. Stop it. They've given 50, 60 billion to Ukraine as well. People are getting out on the streets in Czech Republic, in the Netherlands, in Germany. Today it was Belgium, in Brussels as well, 10,000 people. Do they go all in, or do they start to say, you know what, we've got to start moving away from this Ukraine project?
I don't know. I mean, I saw today, there was a story, NATO came out and said that they're going to increase their ammunition purchases and production or something like that. I don't know what that's really going to do them at this late stage in the game. It's surely going to make a lot of people in the MIC richer, but, is it going to have any real impact?
How the factory's going to run? How are the businesses going to run?
True.
I mean,
they can't produce toilet paper. How are you going to produce heavy artillery?
What happens if Russia, and I'm sure that they don't want to do this because they don't want to harm the people of Ukraine, but what happens if they decide to turn off the transit through Ukraine?
Yeah.
What happens then?